Why was everyone staring at her like she'd stepped out of a history book? The helicopter's rotors slowed to a stop, throwing sand across the landing zone of Forward Operating Base Arabus, a lonely outpost surrounded by miles of desert silence. And out of that helicopter stepped Sergeant Anna Petrova. She moved slowly, deliberately, the kind of stillness that only comes from years of knowing how to survive. But to the young soldiers watching her, that calm looked like weakness. Her uniform was faded, her sleeves rolled with military precision, her hair silver-streaked and tied back tight. In her hand, a long, canvas-wrapped rifle case. It looked old, out of place. Corporal Diaz, the platoon's golden boy, leaned toward one of his men and muttered, "Check out Grandma's luggage. Think she brought knitting needles in there." The others laughed. Their laughter was sharp, nervous, the kind that hides insecurity behind volume. Anna didn't react. She just looked at the horizon, at the jagged mountains clawing up from the sand. It wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated. It wouldn't be the last. Inside the base, everything was dust-colored and digital. Glass panels, tablets, screens showing live drone feeds. This was war turned into data, and Anna was a relic from a world where the only numbers that mattered were wind speed and heart rate. When she reported to Colonel Marcus Thorne, the commander of the base, he barely looked up. His eyes flicked across her personnel file on a glowing tablet, long lines of classified text, most of it blacked out. "Sergeant Petrova," he said, his tone precise, mechanical. "You've been out of a line unit for 5 years. Command desk assignment." "Yes, sir." He nodded once, not with approval but calculation. "This post is not a retirement home, Sergeant. My men are running next-generation Overwatch. Ballistics AI, predictive targeting, networked optics. I asked for someone proficient in M2010s and digital targeting systems." Anna's face stayed impassive. "I can contribute, sir." He looked up finally, and for a brief second she saw it in his eyes, doubt so thick it was almost pity. "I'm sure you can," he said, dismissing her with a wave. "Corporal Diaz will integrate you into the platoon. Make sure your gear meets spec. I don't tolerate weak links." The word weak lingered in the air like a mosquito bite. In the platoon's ready room, Diaz was already waiting, surrounded by his team of young snipers. Their rifles gleamed, sleek and black, with smart scopes glowing faint blue. On the wall behind them, a monitor scrolled through performance stats like a leaderboard in a video game. When Anna entered, the laughter started again, soft at first, then louder. Diaz stood, a smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. "The colonel says you're with us now," he said. "We run a tight team, every shot logged, every error tracked. No room for guesswork here. You got the M2010 system." She unzipped her case and pulled out her rifle. The room went quiet. The weapon wasn't sleek or black. It was wood and steel, handcrafted, polished by time and touch. A bolt-action, decades old. The kind of weapon they'd seen only in training manuals and museums. Diaz blinked. "What is that?" "My rifle," Anna replied simply. He took it from her hands before she could protest, turning it over like a toy he didn't understand. "It must weigh a ton," he scoffed. "What's this? Real wood? No composite stock, no ballistic processor, you afraid of polymer?" The others laughed again. Roar, the youngest sniper, reached out to grab it, fumbling with the unfamiliar weight. Diaz slapped his arm playfully, too hard. The rifle slipped. Time slowed. The sound of the impact wasn't a clatter. It was a thud, heavy, final, wrong. The scope struck the concrete first, the steel turret snapping sideways. The recoil of sound hit Anna like a gunshot. She dropped to one knee, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted the rifle. The stock had cracked, a deep splinter running like a vein through the wood. The scope mount was bent. Her zero was gone. Diaz's smirk faltered for half a second, then returned sharper. Whoops, guess it's not as tough as it looks. You'll need a new one. Welcome to the 21st century. Anna didn't speak. She looked at him, really looked, and she saw it. The insecurity, the need to dominate, the fear that her quiet competence might expose his shallow confidence. She stood, holding the broken rifle like a wounded animal. Then she turned and walked out without a word. The silence she left behind was louder than any insult. Colonel Thorne didn't even look up when she reported the damage. An accident during inspection, he asked, already scrolling through supply forms. We'll requisition a new scope, maybe a new system entirely. Supply birds due in 2-3 weeks. Sir, Anna said quietly, I can repair it. That made him look up. Repair it, he repeated, as if she'd told him she could rebuild a satellite with duct tape. Sergeant, that's a precision weapon, not a lawnmower. The stock's compromised, the mount's bent, you can't just slap glue on it and call it fixed. I can fix it, sir. He leaned back, exhaling through his nose. You're off the duty roster until it's replaced and requalified. I can't have a sniper in Overwatch with a broken gun. Find something useful to do. Mess hall, supply inventory, I don't care. Dismissed. That night the desert wind screamed through the wire fences like a living thing. The barracks were silent, except for the soft hum of air filters, but Anna wasn't in her bunk. She was in the maintenance bay. The place smelled of diesel and hot metal. Shadows swayed under fluorescent lights. A lone mechanic, Master Sergeant Elias, worked on a generator, grease staining his hands. He looked up when Anna entered, carrying her rifle. Help you, Sergeant? He asked, wiping his hands. I need a workbench, she said. He nodded to the corner. Don't break anything I can't fix. Anna laid her rifle on the steel surface and unzipped the case. Under the harsh white light, the damage looked worse. The fine cracks spiderwebbing through the wood, the bent scope mount warped just enough to make precision impossible. To anyone else it was ruined. To her, it was a patient in need of surgery. She removed the scope gently, hands steady as a surgeon. She separated the action from the stock. The rifle was now in pieces, a body disassembled. From an old comms unit, she salvaged a carbon fiber mesh plate. From a med kit, she borrowed 2-part epoxy. She cleaned the cracks with a dental pick, blowing away dust, then began brushing resin into the fissures. Her touch was impossibly delicate, each movement deliberate, silent, the kind of silence that demands respect. Elias kept glancing over, curiosity etched in the grease lines of his face. To him, it looked like obsession. To her, it was devotion. When she finished sealing the cracks, she wrapped the stock tightly in electrical tape, forcing the resin into every crevice. It looked ugly, temporary, but the truth was, she was strengthening it from the inside out. Then came the mount. Elias whistled low when he saw it. You're not gonna bend that back cold, he muttered. You'll snap it clean. I know, Anna said, still studying the metal. You need to heat it, get it cherry red, but you'll lose the temper if you don't have a forge. You'll turn it into butter. Anna looked up at him for the first time. Do you have a torch? Elias blinked, then smiled faintly. Yeah, and a bucket of used motor oil, but that's not. Give me both. He handed them over, half curious, half convinced he was about to watch disaster. Anna clamped the mount in a vise, laid a heavy steel plate over it, then ignited the torch. The flame hissed to life, blue and white. She didn't heat the mount directly. Instead, she let the fire lick the plate, transferring heat slowly, evenly. Watching the metal darken, deepen, bloom into a dull cherry glow. Then she struck. Not with brute force, but with precision. Each hammer tap was measured, timed with her breath. The sound tang, tang, tang echoed softly through the bay. Elias watched, mesmerized. The bent steel seemed to relax under her rhythm, easing back into shape like it remembered where it belonged. When it was perfect, she quenched it in the bucket of oil. Smoke exploded upward in a violent hiss, filling the room with the smell of burnt metal and old diesel. Elias coughed, waving the smoke away. "You just retempered hardened steel with a blowtorch and a bucket of sludge," he muttered. "That's not possible." Anna said nothing. She was already cleaning the mount, her movements slow, methodical. By 400, the epoxy had cured. The carbon fiber patch hardened into a scar, ugly but strong. She sanded it smooth, reassembled the rifle, torqued the bolts by memory, leveled the scope with a hanging plumb line she'd rigged from the ceiling. When she was done, the rifle looked different, not perfect, but alive again. Elias stared at her in silence. "You didn't fix it," he said finally. "You rebuilt it." Anna just nodded. "It's ready." She wiped the workbench clean, left the bay spotless, and walked out as the first gray light crept over the desert. The morning wind cut cold through the dunes. The range stretched before her, a ribbon of steel targets shimmering in the early heat. Anna lay prone on the ground, the sand biting into her elbows. She loaded a single round, a cold-bore shot, the truest test of any rifle. She exhaled slowly, the sound of the desert filling her ears. Crack! The bullet sliced through the silence. A second later, a faint ping. Hit! She adjusted, fired again. Another ping. A third time, dead center. The rifle was whole again, scarred, imperfect, but true. And so was she. She didn't notice the jeep approaching until the dust reached her boots. Colonel Thorne climbed out, Diaz beside him, grinning like a wolf. "Sergeant Petrova," Thorne barked, "did I not order you off the range?" Anna stood, calm, collected. "I was verifying my equipment is operational, sir." "Operational?" Diaz laughed. "That antique, you put tape on it, you're lucky if you can hit the target frame." Anna didn't rise to it. "I'm zeroed," she said simply. Thorne's jaw tightened. "Fine," he said, "prove it." He pointed toward the digital LDSAT range, the platoon's pride. "Run the qualification, right now." Diaz's grin widened. A public test, a humiliation. Anna just nodded. Her rifle rested easily in her hands, scarred, heavy, beautiful. And as she walked toward the firing line, the crowd began to gather. Mechanics, clerks, soldiers. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness something they would never forget. What did they expect her to do? Flinch? The whispers followed her like a second wind as she crossed the sand toward the LDSAT range. "That's the old woman. She's gonna embarrass herself." Someone laughed. Someone else muttered, "Poor thing." Anna Petrova heard it all and let it pass through her like dust through wire mesh. She had learned long ago that humiliation is just noise, and noise only matters if you stop moving. The sun was sharp now, bleeding white light across the shooting lanes. At the far end, steel silhouettes waited, some still, some mounted on tracks that would make them dart and vanish. The digital console blinked alive, green icons glowing like eyes. Colonel Thorne stood behind the firing line, arms folded. His posture was that of a man certain of the outcome. Corporal Diaz lingered beside him, smirk anchored in place, jaw tight with anticipation. To them this was theater, to Anna it was ritual. She knelt at the line, spread out her mat, and lowered herself to the earth. The ground was hard and uneven, perfect. She felt the heartbeat of the desert underneath her ribs. Elias, the mechanic, had followed at a distance, wiping grease from his hands. Private Chun hovered near the back of the crowd, his young eyes flicking nervously from Anna to Diaz. The range officer's voice cut through the air, metallic through the speakers. "Shooter ready." Anna drew in a breath so slow it was barely visible. Her finger brushed the trigger, her cheek settled against the patched wood. "Stand by." The green light flashed. A silhouette popped at 450 meters. Crack! The steel dropped before the echo of the shot even reached it. A second target rose at 720. Crack. Gone. A third moved left to right at 600. She let it a fraction of a heartbeat. Crack. Down. 3 shots, 3 hits. The murmur started, faint, confused. Diaz frowned, the smirk wavering. The targets kept coming, faster now. Crack, ping, hit. Crack, ping, hit. 10 in, 12 in, 15. Her rhythm never changed. Her bolts cycled with liquid precision. Each casing flicked away like a thought she no longer needed. She wasn't using the base's digital readouts. No rangefinder, no wind meter. She read the desert instead, the shimmer of heat, the drift of dust devils, the breath of wind against her cheek. Where others saw chaos, she saw a pattern. At 25 hits, the laughter had stopped completely. The only sound was her rifle, that steady crackping, the heartbeat of focus. Colonel Thorne's binoculars were pressed to his eyes now, his jaw tight. Diaz muttered under his breath, "It's luck, she'll miss one soon." But she didn't. At 34, she shot 2 targets almost simultaneously, one shoot, one no-shoot. Her trigger broke on the real threat. Her finger froze on the innocent silhouette. No hesitation, no waste. The range AI marked perfect decision time. At 50, her barrel shimmered with heat. The mirage through her scope twisted the horizon into waves. She adjusted instinctively, timing each breath, waiting for the split second between heartbeats. Crack, hit 51. Crack, hit 52. Her shoulder thudded under the recoil again and again. She felt bruises blooming, muscles trembling. She ignored it. Pain was part of the mathematics. The wind shifted, hard. Flags whipped back and forth along the berm. A target appeared at 1,100 meters. The gust screamed right to left. Diaz leaned toward Roar, whispering, "No chance, 3 mils off minimum." Anna exhaled once. She aimed far into empty air, nowhere near the silhouette. Crack. A long, impassable pause. Then ping. Hit 56. The crowd gasped. Elias crossed his arms, a slow smile breaking through the grease on his face. Diaz's lips moved soundlessly. He had no words left. There's a moment in every soldier's life when the noise fades, when the world contracts until only purpose remains. Anna had entered that silence. She was not counting anymore, not chasing records or proving anything. She was simply doing what she was built to do. Each target appeared like a question. Each shot was her answer. By 70, sweat streaked her temple. Her breathing was shallow but steady. By 80, she'd stopped hearing the crowd entirely. Colonel Thorne lowered the binoculars. The expression on his face had changed, no longer contempt, but something closer to disbelief, maybe even shame. Crack, hit 84. Diaz's record. One more target blinked to life. 950 meters, partial cover, 3-second exposure. She fired without hesitation. Crack, hit 85. A ripple went through the onlookers, a sound like awe and fear braided together. She had tied the record with a rifle that had been declared scrap metal. But she didn't stop. Crack, hit 86. Crack, hit 87. Crack, hit 88. Her movement slowed slightly, not from fatigue but from reverence. Each round, each adjustment was prayer. At 90, even Thorne was whispering numbers under his breath. At 95, the target stretched to 1,800 and 1,950 meters, distances where even digital systems faltered. She hit both. Crack, hit 95. Crack, hit 96. Now the barrel glowed dull red. The mirage blurred her scope so badly she could hardly see. She waited. Her pulse slowed. Crack, hit 97. Crack, hit 98. One last silhouette rose at 1,300 meters, wind screaming sideways. She shifted a hair's breadth, felt the seam between the two colliding gusts, the higher stream pushing right to left, the ground dust spinning opposite. She aimed for the invisible border between them. Crack. Silence. Then ping. Hit 99. The score glowed on the digital screen, almost mocking the laws of probability. The crowd didn't cheer, they couldn't. They just stared. Mechanics, admin clerks, cooks, young soldiers who'd never seen mastery that quiet before. The range officer's voice crackled, nervous. Stand by, malfunction on target, array 100, final target not responding. The machine had broken before she did. Anna slowly lifted her head from the scope. She engaged the safety, cleared the chamber, and stood. No smile, no celebration. She packed her rifle as if ending a routine training session. Colonel Thorne couldn't move. Diaz stared at the digital board, 99 out of 100. Average engagement time 47 seconds. Wind accuracy 100%. When Anna walked past them, Diaz almost flinched, as if her silence were louder than any victory cry. Back in his office, Thorne replayed the footage. Slow motion, each shot logged, each impact perfect. He opened her file again. Redactions everywhere, names, missions, dates. Something gnawed at him. He switched to a secure command channel, the kind used for classified calls. The voice on the other end was gravelly, older. "This is General Armitage." "Sir," Thorne began carefully, "I have a Sergeant Anna Petrova assigned to my command. I'm seeking clarification on her background." Silence, then a chuckle that wasn't amused. "Clarification. Son, if Anna Petrova's on your base, you don't clarify, you cooperate." Thorne frowned. "Sir, her file is redacted." "Yeah, for a reason." The general's tone hardened. "You know the name Baba Yaga?" Thorne froze. "The myth, special operations legend." "She's not a myth," Armitage said. "She's standing in your desert. We used to tell rookies that if they messed up their Overwatch, Baba Yaga would find them before the enemy did. That woman wrote the manual your hotshot corporal pretends to understand." Thorne swallowed hard. "I may have reassigned her to temporary duties." "You put her on mess duty." The general's voice dropped to a growl. "Listen carefully. She pulled 3 men out of an ambush 5 years ago and took 3 rounds doing it. Command put her behind a desk because it was the only way to keep her alive. If she's back in the field, it's because she chose to be. Do not underestimate her again. Is that clear?" Thorne's mouth was dry. "Crystal, sir." When the line went dead, he sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The word legend felt too small. Outside his window, Anna walked across the range, her rifle slung low. The patched wood caught the light, ugly, scarred, perfect. That night, the maintenance bay door slid open again. Anna sat at the same workbench, disassembling and cleaning her rifle piece by piece. She didn't eat, didn't speak. Her movements were slow, ritualistic, as if she were reminding the weapon it still belonged to the world. The door creaked. Corporal Diaz stood there, framed by the amber light. No swagger now, no smile. In his hand, a bottle of premium bore solvent, the kind he hoarded like gold. He placed it gently beside her cleaning kit. "The wind," he said quietly, "at 1,100, how did you?" He couldn't finish. Anna's hands kept working. "The mirage ran right to left," she said softly, "but the dust at ground level went the other way. I aimed at the seam." Diaz nodded once. It wasn't an apology, just understanding, the kind soldiers exchange when words aren't enough. He turned and left. Moments later, Private Chun appeared in the doorway, nervous, clutching a datapad. "Sergeant, could you explain Coriolis's drift? The manual it doesn't make sense when I read it." Anna looked at him, this young soldier with more curiosity than pride, and gestured to the crate beside her. "Sit," she said. By morning, a new duty roster was posted. At the top, Platoon Lead Instructor SGT, A. Petrova. Below it, a directive written in thorns-clipped tone. All marksmen will undergo supplementary training in analog marksmanship, wind reading, and fieldcraft. Instructor, SGT, Petrova. The digital war had just found its soul again, iron and wood, silence and patience. That night, Anna lay prone in a sniper hide high above the base. The world below glowed faintly, outpost lights scattered like fragile stars. Her rifle rested beside her, patched and scarred, the stock rough under her glove. The wind sang its low desert song. She listened, really listened, as if the earth itself spoke a language only she remembered. She didn't smile, she didn't need to. The desert didn't care about rank or systems or data. It respected only patience. And beneath that moon, Anna Petrova, Baba Yaga, kept her silent vigil, the guardian of a place that had forgotten what respect meant until she reminded them. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did silence feel heavier than the wind that morning? At FOB Arabus, even the desert seemed to pause. Something had shifted overnight, subtle, invisible, but everyone felt it. When the soldiers awoke, the new duty roster was already pinned to the main board outside the mess. The usual chatter quieted as they read the top line. Platoon Lead Instructor, Sergeant A. Petrova. Directive: all marksmen will undergo supplementary analog training. Attendance mandatory. No one laughed, not this time. Corporal Diaz arrived late, his hair still damp from a rushed shower. When he saw his own name listed under her command, he stopped dead. For the first time in weeks, he didn't have something clever to say. Anna walked past him without a word, a folder tucked under her arm, her patched rifle slung over her shoulder. The morning sun caught the carbon fiber scar in the stock, and for a moment it looked like a line of light, a flaw that had become a feature. The range was quiet except for the whine of distant generators. A half-circle of soldiers stood uneasily, their high-tech rifles hanging from slings, waiting for instruction. Anna faced them, her expression calm, unreadable. She didn't need to raise her voice. "Set your rifles down," she said. A few exchanged confused glances. "Ma'am," Roar asked, uncertain. "You heard me. Weapons on the ground. Bring only your optics." They hesitated, but Diaz finally broke the tension. "Do it." When the last rifle clattered down, Anna nodded toward the far dunes. "We walk," she said. The desert was merciless by mid-morning. Heat shimmered off the sand like invisible fire. They climbed a ridge overlooking the range, then another, until the outpost was just a blur of tan and wire behind them. Anna stopped on a rocky ledge. She pointed to the valley below. "Range 1,200 meters," she said. "Spot the movement." They squinted through their scopes, confused. There was nothing visible except wind and rock. "Nothing moving," Diaz finally said. Anna said nothing. She just stared through her own scope for a long moment, then adjusted it a hair to the left. "Watch the shade under the boulder," she murmured. And then they saw it, a faint shift of color, a desert fox moving just enough to disturb the shadow. It was invisible until she told them where to look. "That's fieldcraft," she said. "Not sensors, not data, just observation." They said nothing. The desert said everything. Back at the range, she made them shoot, not at reactive targets or AI-controlled dummies, but at steel plates half buried in sand. No digital feedback, no sensors. Only the sound. "Listen," she said, "the steel will tell you the truth." The first rounds rang wide, echoing dull against the dunes. Diaz cursed under his breath, adjusting his rifle. Anna crouched beside him. "Stop fighting the wind, feel it." He glanced at her, frustrated. "Feel it? What does that even?" "Close your eyes," she said. "What direction does the wind touch your face from? What does it taste like? dry sand or cool air. The difference tells you where it shifts. He stared, skeptical, but obeyed. The wind brushed his cheek, then swirled faintly at his neck. He exhaled, right to left shifting just before the crest. "Good," she said quietly. "Now shoot." He fired. The round hit dead center. The sound of steel echoed across the range like a punctuation mark. Day by day, her presence reshaped the platoon. The same soldiers who once mocked her now stayed late after training, lingering near her bench to ask questions. Private Chun followed her like a shadow, hungry for knowledge. He wasn't the best shot, not yet, but he listened with an intensity that reminded her of her younger self, long before medals and scars and silence. He once asked her hesitantly, "Sergeant, why do you still do it, after everything, after what they did?" She paused, cleaning the bolt assembly of her rifle. "Because when everything breaks," she said softly, "something still needs to hold steady." He didn't fully understand, but one day he would. Colonel Thorne watched from his office window, the wind tugging at the edges of the blinds. At first, he'd resisted the idea of analog training. It sounded like regression. But the reports didn't lie. Scores were improving. Coordination had tightened. Even Diaz's arrogance had dulled into focus. She was rebuilding his platoon quietly, efficiently, with nothing but patience and grit. And beneath it all, Thorne began to feel something he hadn't expected. Respect. One evening he summoned her. She arrived punctually, her uniform crisp, her expression neutral. He gestured for her to sit. "Your methods are unconventional," he said, "but effective. The board is impressed. Command has approved continued training." Anna gave a small nod. "Thank you, sir." Thorne hesitated, fingers tapping the desk. "I owe you an apology, Sergeant. I misjudged you. I misjudged what experience looks like." Her eyes softened for the first time since she'd arrived. "You don't owe me anything, sir," she said. "Just let them learn, that's enough." He studied her a moment longer. "You could have transferred out after the incident," he said. "Why stay here?" Anna looked past him, out the window, where the desert stretched into infinity. "Because," she said quietly, "you don't abandon a place that still needs fixing." The next weeks passed in a blur of training and transformation. The platoon that once laughed behind her back now treated her like a quiet compass, the kind that points true no matter who holds it. But even as their skills sharpened, a sense of unease crept into the base. Something was happening beyond the wire. Unmarked vehicles spotted at night, comms interference, drones reporting movement near the northern ridges. It was all small, disconnected, but Anna noticed patterns where others saw noise. She mentioned it once to Elias while cleaning her rifle. "You feel it too?" she asked. The old mechanic nodded slowly. "Yeah, the air's different lately, like it's waiting for something." Anna's gaze drifted toward the mountains. "It's not the air," she murmured. "It's the quiet before it changes." The attack came 3 nights later. It started with static. Then the unmistakable sound of distant gunfire. The alarm blared across the base. Soldiers scrambled to their positions. The sky flashed with tracer fire from unseen ridges. Thorne's voice echoed through comms. "Contact North Sector. All Overwatch teams report." Diaz's platoon mobilized fast, but the digital targeting systems flickered, disrupted by heavy jamming. The AI scopes glitched, freezing mid-feed. "Systems down," Roar shouted. "No visuals." Thorne's voice cut in again, tense. "Use analog backup, repeat analog backup." For a moment, chaos reigned. Then a calm voice broke through. "Follow me," Anna said. They climbed the ridge east of the base, crawling into firing positions by instinct. No data, no guidance, just eyes, breath, and the moonlight bleeding through the clouds. Anna lay flat, her patched rifle steady in the sand. Her scope caught faint movement, a flicker of light, a muzzle flash almost invisible against the dark. 200 meters north of the wrecked truck, she whispered. Diaz shifted, following her aim. I don't see. Crack. The sound split the night. A faint silhouette dropped behind a dune. Now you do, she said quietly. Diaz grinned despite himself. Copy that. The platoon followed her lead. No digital readouts, no AI corrections. Just wind, judgment, and instinct. Within minutes, the chaos turned into coordination. Each of her commands, soft, precise, guided them like a conductor leading an invisible symphony. Targets fell one after another, not because of superior tech, but because of something simpler: focus, patience, trust. When the last shot echoed away, the desert fell silent again. No cheers, no shouts. Just breathing, tired, alive, grateful. Thorne's voice came over the comm, softer than usual. Status. Diaz responded, his tone steady. All threats neutralized. No casualties. Guidance from Sergeant Petrova. There was a pause on the line. Then. Understood. At dawn, the desert was calm again. The horizon burned gold. Anna sat alone near the ridge, her rifle across her knees. The carbon patch caught the morning light like a scar reborn into strength. Diaz approached quietly, sitting beside her. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he spoke. When you first got here, he said, I thought you were done, outdated, but last night. He stopped, searching for the right words. You didn't just save us, you changed us. Anna didn't look at him. She watched the sun rise, the light crawling slowly across the dunes. I didn't change anything, she said softly. You were just looking at the wrong targets. Diaz smiled faintly. Still, thanks. She nodded once. Keep your scope level next time. You were 1/2 mil off on that last one. He laughed quietly, respectfully. That evening, Thorne met her by the range. He was holding her personnel file. The general called, he said simply. He told me about Baba Yaga. Anna didn't flinch. That's just a story, she said. Thorne shook his head. Not anymore. He handed her the file. Inside, the redactions had been lifted. Missions, locations, confirmed kills, rescues, all there, now visible. You don't have to hide it, he said. The men deserve to know who's been teaching them. She closed the folder gently. They don't need a ghost, she said. They need someone real. He nodded slowly, understanding. That night the base was quiet again. The wind had changed direction, softer, cooler. In the sniper hide on the ridge, Anna rested her head against the stock of her rifle. The desert stretched endless before her, a living thing that never forgot who earned its respect. Behind her, the young soldiers she'd trained slept easier, their rifles cleaned, their minds clearer. She had given them something technology never could, the art of stillness. Her eyes drifted shut, but she wasn't sleeping. She was listening to the whispering wind, to the pulse of the land, to the silence she had reclaimed. And somewhere deep inside that silence, one truth echoed back. Sometimes the strongest sound in war is the click of a bolt, the breath between shots, and the choice to stand back up when they break what defines you. Why do legends always find their way back to the fight? Sometimes it isn't pride that calls them. It's unfinished business. 3 days had passed since the night they held the ridge. The sand had already swallowed the spent casings, the tracks, the bodies. Only silence remained, and the quiet understanding that something in the platoon had changed forever. The men no longer saluted Anna Petrova out of protocol. They did it out of respect. Even Colonel Thorne, a man welded to data and procedure, began to shift. He no longer looked at her like an old gear grinding in a modern machine. He looked at her like a compass, one that had somehow found true north in a storm of algorithms. But Anna didn't want reverence. She only wanted readiness. Every morning at 500, her voice echoed across the range. Positions, wind check, time your breath. Diaz led by example now. Roar, once careless, shot with discipline. Chun, the youngest, began keeping a small journal, wind directions, mirage notes, firing angles exactly as Anna had shown him. The base ran smoother, quieter. It wasn't a miracle. It was structure, earned one patient day at a time. But calm has a strange way of making soldiers nervous. Because calm never lasts. It was dusk when Thorne called her to his office again. She knocked once and stepped inside. He was staring at a satellite image projected on the wall, a cluster of structures dug into a valley 200 kilometers north. Intelligence just confirmed this, he said without turning. Insurgent outpost, supply cache, comm relay, possibly a command element. We've been ordered to neutralize it. Anna studied the image. The terrain was brutal, narrow passes, sheer cliffs, unpredictable winds, a sniper's nightmare, or heaven. Why show me this, sir? Because you're going, Thorne said simply. We're deploying an observation team for overwatch and confirmation. Small footprint, you'll lead it. Anna didn't answer right away. The light from the projector washed her face in ghostly blue. Why not Diaz? She asked. Thorne hesitated. Because command requested you by name. Her head tilted slightly. Command. He nodded. General Armitage. For a moment the air in the room thickened. The name carried weight, the kind that didn't travel through normal channels. Thorne turned fully to her. He said this operation needs someone who understands patience, someone who can see what machines can't. Anna's gaze stayed fixed on the image. And what exactly am I supposed to see? Thorne exhaled. That's the problem, we don't know, but whatever it is, it's worth sending Baba Yaga for. She went still. The nickname hung in the air like smoke. Don't, she said quietly. That name doesn't belong here. Thorne lowered his eyes. Understood. But the legend had already been spoken, and once a legend is named, it starts to wake. She briefed the team herself. Diaz, Roar, and Chun handpicked. Light and silent, she said. 2-day recon, overwatch from elevation. We don't engage unless necessary. Roar, always curious, asked, What are we watching for, Sergeant? Anna loaded her magazine with deliberate calm. Patterns, she said, and what breaks them. They didn't question her after that. The next morning before dawn, they moved out. The desert stretched infinite before them, an ocean of dust and time. The hum of engines faded behind them as they crossed into silence. Anna walked point. Her pace never faltered, her eyes scanning the horizon like she could see the future in the heat waves. By nightfall, they reached high ground overlooking the valley. Through her scope, she saw movement, tents, trucks, a satellite dish rigged with stolen parts. But what caught her attention wasn't what she saw, it was what she didn't. Too few guards, no visible patrol routes, no light discipline. It looked staged. Something's wrong, she whispered. Diaz crawled beside her. Trap. She nodded slightly. Maybe, or bait. Bait for what? Her answer came in the form of a distant flash. A single, controlled explosion from the south ridge. Then another. Incoming. The first mortar landed 200 meters behind them, throwing sand and shrapnel into the air. Contact, move. They scattered for cover, sliding down the rocks. The sky lit with fire as the ridge erupted under sustained shelling. Roar screamed over the comms. How did they know our position? Anna's jaw clenched. Because we were meant to be found. They hit the valley floor running. The blasts followed, closer each time. Chun stumbled, caught by Diaz's arm. Keep moving, Anna ordered. Her mind was already spinning, not in panic but calculation. Whoever was firing wasn't guessing. Their targeting was too precise, too synchronized. She glanced at her scope and froze. A small reflection high on the opposite ridge, a glint of glass. A sniper. She dropped prone instantly, sighted in and saw him distant, steady, patient. He wasn't firing at random. He was guiding the mortars. She inhaled slowly, her breathing vanishing into the wind. The shot was nearly impossible, long range, high wind shear, unstable footing. But she'd made worse. She exhaled halfway. Crack! The echo rolled across the valley. The reflection vanished. Silence. They reached an old rock outcropping, a natural shelter, and took cover. Dust rained from the ceiling as mortars pounded the ridge above them. Diaz checked Chun's shoulder, grazed by shrapnel, bleeding but stable. Medic kit. Anna tore a strip of gauze from her pack and pressed it against the wound herself. Chun winced. They were waiting for us, he said through gritted teeth. Yes, she replied softly, and they'll come closer now. Diaz frowned. You think they're moving in? They have to confirm kills. That's what I do. There was a pause. Diaz looked at her. You've done this before. Anna met his eyes. Once, she said, and I swore I never would again. For hours they waited in silence, the desert turning from fire to frost as night fell. Finally, movement, faint shadows on the ridge. 6, maybe 7 figures advancing cautiously, flashlights covered. Anna adjusted her scope. Range 800, 2 with RPGs. Orders, Diaz asked. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to engage, but something in her, the part that had seen too much, held back. Hold fire, she whispered. Let them come. They waited, breath shallow, heart steady. The figures crept closer, unaware. At 400 meters, Anna's voice was a whisper of wind. Now. 4 rifles spoke at once. The desert answered in silence. The rest scattered, retreating into darkness. Then quiet again, deep, echoing quiet. Diaz lowered his rifle slowly. You were right. Anna didn't respond. Her eyes were distant, fixed on nothing. When dawn came, the valley looked empty again. But the silence felt wrong. They found the first body, half buried near the ridge. Not an insurgent. A local militia uniform. Unarmed. Diaz crouched beside it, confusion cutting through the adrenaline. These aren't the hostiles from Intel. Anna's jaw tightened. No, they're collateral. Then who were we shooting at? Roar asked quietly. Anna didn't answer. She just looked at the satellite dish near the base of the valley, the one she'd seen the night before. Its cables ran deep into the rock. Too deep for a simple relay. She followed them with her eyes until realization hit. This wasn't an enemy cache. It was a decoy. The command element wasn't here to transmit orders. It was listening. Signal intelligence bait, she muttered. We were sent here to draw them out or to test them. Diaz frowned. Test who? Her eyes hardened. Us. By the time they returned to FOB Arabus, the truth was already unraveling. Thorne met them on the tarmac, his expression storming between relief and confusion. Intel confirmed. Any prisoners? No prisoners, Anna said flatly. Only bodies, locals, no hostiles. He blinked. That's impossible, the satellite. Was wrong, she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes told another story. This wasn't a mistake, it was orchestration. That night she sat alone in the maintenance bay, the same spot where she'd rebuilt her rifle. But this time, there was no calm focus in her hands, only tremors. Elias found her there, staring at the weapon. You fixed that rifle once, he said gently. You can fix yourself again. She shook her head. This isn't about a rifle. He waited. She finally whispered, they used us as bait, to measure response time, casualty ratios, to test old tactics against new tech. That wasn't a mission, it was a study. Elias' jaw clenched. Command did this. Command doesn't need to, they just let it happen. She stared at the rifle, her voice softening. You ever wonder why soldiers stop believing in medals, Elias? He sighed, because they learn who hands them out. The next morning, she stood at the range again. Diaz approached, his face tired but resolute. What now? He asked. She looked at him for a long moment. Now, she said, we teach them what the numbers don't show. That day's training was different. No shooting, no data. She made them line up in silence, facing the desert. Every system in the world can measure distance, she said. None can measure choice. They didn't understand at first. But as she spoke, her voice grew softer, heavier. When you pull the trigger, you don't just hit a target. You change something you can't unmake. And sometimes someone else will decide that for you. She paused, eyes distant, the horizon reflecting in them like glass. When that happens, you have to remember why you started shooting in the first place. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to listen. That night, as darkness swallowed the desert again, Anna stood alone on the ridge. The wind tugged at her hair. The patched rifle rested against her shoulder, its scars black under the moon. The world below glowed faintly, small lights in an ocean of shadow. She knew there would be another call. Another mission. Another test disguised as duty. But for now she breathed. She let the silence hold her, the same silence that had once broken her and now kept her whole. Because sometimes, the only way to fix what's broken is to keep using it until it remembers what it was made for. When does a soldier stop following orders? When they break the law. Or when they break something deeper. The desert had gone quiet again. Too quiet. After the failed intel strike, the platoon was different. They moved the same, spoke the same, trained the same, but something invisible had cracked. Even the air in FOB Arabus felt heavier. The official report called the operation a miscommunication in field data transmission. Anna knew better. She'd seen the clean precision of the ambush, the timing, the false patterns in the satellite feed. That wasn't miscommunication. That was orchestration. Colonel Thorne called her in 2 days later. He didn't look at her when she entered, just stared at the glowing tablet on his desk. His voice was flat. Command has cleared your team of fault. Anna said nothing. It didn't feel like absolution. It felt like avoidance. Thorne rubbed his temples. I've been ordered to stand by for further directives. Until then, no external operations. You'll resume base training duties. Understood. He hesitated, then looked up. Sergeant, I didn't know. Her expression didn't change. Sir, I stopped expecting anyone to. She turned to leave. Petrova, he said quietly. You're angry, I get it, but don't do anything that. She looked over her shoulder. Sir, she interrupted, I don't do anything, I fix what's broken. That night she found herself in the motor pool again, not to work, but to think. The faint hum of power tools echoed in the distance. Elias was tightening bolts on a Humvee engine when she appeared. He didn't look up. You've got that look again. What look? The one people get right before they decide something dangerous. She smirked faintly. You sound like Command. He set his wrench down. I've been Command doesn't mean I liked it. They stood in silence for a moment. Outside, wind whispered across the wire fences like an old secret. Finally, Anna spoke. They sent us into a trap to measure the fallout. They'll do it again, maybe somewhere worse. Someone needs to stop it. Elias studied her, and that someone's you. She didn't answer. He sighed. You fix things, sure. But you can't fix the system, Anna. The system doesn't break. It just bends people until they do. Her eyes met his. Then maybe it needs to meet something that doesn't bend. The next morning, she trained harder. So did the platoon. She noticed it, the subtle change in how Diaz moved, how Roar adjusted his scope, how Chun kept his back straighter. They weren't just training anymore. They were learning how to think. She never mentioned the mission again, but she didn't have to. The lesson had already buried itself inside each of them. The understanding that obedience without awareness is just another form of blindness. Still, she knew it was only a matter of time before the next operation came. And when it did, they would be tested not for their aim, but for their conscience. The call came 5 days later. Thorne's voice over the intercom was clipped, controlled. All Overwatch personnel report to Briefing Room Alpha, priority red. Anna walked in with her team. The air was thick, electric. A map glowed on the main screen. This time, a small desert village marked with red indicators. High-value target confirmed, Thorne said. Name, Al-Sharif. Rebel coordinator, known supplier of munitions. Drone imagery shows his compound here. He pointed to a structure near the edge of the village. Objective, eliminate with precision strike. Collateral risk minimal. Civilian population under 30. Under 30. He said it like it was a margin of error, not lives. Anna spoke quietly, intel source. Thorne's eyes flickered. Command channel classified. That was all she needed to hear. Her team glanced at her, Diaz, Roar, Chun, all waiting for her reaction. She kept her face impassive. When do we move? 0500, Thorne replied. You'll coordinate from Overwatch Ridge 2. Authorization will come from command directly. She nodded once, understood. But inside, something began to burn. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat by her bunk, the desert wind rattling the shutters, the faint hum of base generators filling the dark. Her rifle leaned against the wall, moonlight tracing its scar. The same weapon that had been broken by arrogance. The same weapon she had resurrected by hand. Now they wanted her to use it to kill people she hadn't even seen. Not enemies. Just coordinates on a screen. She closed her eyes. And the memories came, one she'd buried deep. A different mission, a different desert. A decade ago. A similar intel strike. The same kind of target, supposedly armed militants. Only later did she learn they were civilians, caught in the wrong place, labeled insurgent sympathizers, because it made the paperwork cleaner. She had hit every shot perfectly, and it had haunted her ever since. The silence after a wrong shot was worse than the sound itself. Before dawn, she met Diaz outside the barracks. He was checking gear, his expression unreadable. Ready? He asked. She looked past him at the horizon. The first hint of sunrise burned faint orange over the mountains. Are you? She asked. He frowned. We've done this before. She shook her head. Not like this. He caught the tone in her voice and hesitated. Something off about the op. Everything, she said simply. He waited for her to elaborate, but she didn't. Look, he said, I don't like it either, but it's not our call. She looked at him then, her eyes cold but calm. It's always our call. We're the ones who pull the trigger. He didn't respond, not because he disagreed, but because he couldn't. They reached Overwatch Ridge 2 hours later. The view stretched for miles, a fragile village nestled in the valley below. Small homes, smoke from morning fires, the faint movement of children playing near a well. Diaz looked through his scope, uneasy. This doesn't look like a munitions depot. It's not, Anna said softly. Her calm earpiece crackled. Overwatch 1, this is command. Confirm visual on target structure. Anna pressed her mic. Confirmed. Authorization, fire mission pending. Hold for coordinates. She lowered her rifle. Her hand hovered near the safety. Chun looked over. Sergeant. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They're testing us again. Roar swallowed. You're sure? She nodded slowly. They want to see if we'll question it this time. Diaz exhaled hard. If we don't take the shot, they'll replace us, she finished. Maybe worse. She stared down her scope again, her crosshairs resting on a small structure. A family walked out. A man, a woman, 2 children. The man carried nothing but a shovel. Her finger hovered over the trigger, not to fire but to feel. The comm crackled again. Overwatch 1, fire mission approved. Execute immediately. Silence. No one moved. Overwatch 1, acknowledge. Still silence. Petrova, that's in order. She inhaled slowly, then clicked her mic. Negative. A pause. Static. Say again, Overwatch. She repeated it clearly. Negative, not a valid target. Thorne's voice broke through, now tight, furious. Sergeant, confirm your refusal. I confirm, sir, she said evenly. You have the wrong intel. The comm went dead. Diaz stared at her. You just... Yes, she said quietly. Chun's voice shook. They'll court-martial you. Maybe, she said, but the alternative is worse. Back at base, the storm hit. Thorne was waiting, his jaw locked. What in God's name were you thinking? I was thinking about accuracy, Anna said calmly. The kind you can't calculate. Thorne slammed his hand on the table. You disobeyed a direct order. No, sir, she replied. I refused an invalid one. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Thorne's anger cracked, not into rage but weariness. He rubbed his eyes. You saw civilians. I saw people, she said. That was enough. He exhaled sharply and leaned back. You know what happens now, he said quietly. She nodded. Yes, sir. The report went up the chain within hours. Refusal to engage, breach of protocol. But something unexpected happened. Diaz filed a corroborating statement. So did Roar and Chun. They wrote that she had acted on ethical grounds consistent with field assessment, that command's data was inconclusive, that firing would have resulted in civilian casualties. Thorne signed it himself. For the first time, the machine hesitated. No one knew what to do with a refusal that wasn't mutiny, just conscience. The formal inquiry came days later. A secure call from command. Thorne listened quietly, answering with yes, sir, and understood until the line went dead. Then he called Anna in. Her boots clicked softly on the concrete floor. She stood at attention. Command reviewed the footage, Thorne said. They saw what you saw. She waited. They've dismissed the charge, he continued slowly. You're reinstated full operational status. A pause. Then, almost as an afterthought, they also said you were right. Anna didn't smile. Truth doesn't need permission to be right, she said softly. Thorne's voice lowered. You just made enemies in high places. I've had worse. He nodded once. If they come for you, they'll have to come through me first. She looked at him, surprised. Why? He shrugged faintly. Because I'm tired of pretending the machine never breaks. That night, Anna sat on her ridge again. The rifle rested beside her, quiet and whole, the same weapon that had been shattered, dismissed, resurrected. The desert wind carried the faint hum of distant engines, a reminder that peace was always temporary. But for now, the stars were bright. She closed her eyes and breathed. In a world that worshipped systems and numbers, she had chosen something far harder. To be human. And as the night deepened, a single thought crossed her mind. Maybe strength isn't proven by how many shots you take, but by the ones you refuse. Why does truth always cost more than lies? Because once you speak it, you can't take it back. At FOB Arabus, the wind had changed again. It wasn't the kind of shift you could measure on instruments. It was colder, quieter, the kind that made soldiers glance over their shoulders, wondering who was listening. Anna Petrova had won the battle, but not the war. She defied a direct order and lived to tell the truth. That wasn't victory, that was provocation. The next week, the whispers began. First, her access code stopped working for the upper range. Then her requisition requests were delayed. Her inbox filled with clipped responses from command, the kind that looked polite on paper but felt like punishment in disguise. And every night, she caught glimpses of men she didn't recognize moving through the admin corridors, plain uniforms, no insignia. Command had a long memory, and they never forgot disobedience. She noticed it most during the morning drills. The mood had changed. Some soldiers, new replacements from another battalion, kept their distance from her team. They'd whisper when she passed, glancing away when she looked back. Diaz saw it too. He caught up with her after training one afternoon, sweat still shining on his face. "They're isolating us," he said quietly. "I know. Word going around that you compromised a live operation. They're calling it insubordination." Anna didn't react. "Let them." Diaz's voice dropped. "This isn't just talk, they're building a case," quietly. She finally looked at him. Her gaze was calm, sharp, like a rifle leveled on a truth she'd already accepted. "They're afraid," she said. "Afraid of what?" "Of a soldier who still thinks for herself." Later that night, she found Elias in the motor pool. He was working under a transport truck, the rhythmic clank of tools echoing against the concrete. "You heard?" she asked. He rolled out from under the chassis, grease on his hands. "About the witch hunt?" "Yeah." "Any idea how far it's gone?" He wiped his palms on a rag, far enough that the supply clerk suddenly forgot how to spell your name. She smirked faintly. "That bad?" He nodded. "They want you out quietly, not with a trial, with paperwork, the kind that makes it look like your choice." She leaned against the workbench. "That's not happening." Elias gave her a long, knowing look. "You sure you want to fight this, Anna? You could walk away, retire, find peace." Her voice was steady, low. "Peace isn't the same thing as silence." He exhaled through his nose. "You're gonna get yourself buried under their bureaucracy." She met his eyes. "Better that than buried under their lies." 2 nights later, the sabotage began. It started small, her scope alignment off by 2 mils. Then her data logs disappeared from the training system. Then during a night exercise, the comm line to her team cut out mid-drill, replaced with static. When she checked the control center afterward, the technician swore it was a software error. But the cables told a different story, one cleanly unplugged, then reconnected. Someone wasn't just watching her. They were trying to erase her. The tension came to a head a week later. Colonel Thorne summoned her. His tone over comms was clipped, formal. "Report to my office immediately, Sergeant." When she entered, 2 men in civilian attire were already there. Plain suits, blank faces. Their presence filled the room like a shadow. Thorne looked uncomfortable. "These gentlemen are from Central Oversight Command." One of the men smiled thinly. "Sergeant Petrova, we're conducting a standard inquiry into recent operational irregularities." Her eyes flicked to Thorne. He didn't meet them. "Of course," she said evenly. The man placed a small recorder on the desk. "For transparency." He leaned forward. "We understand you refused an authorized strike order." "I refused an invalid one," she corrected calmly. He smiled again, cold and professional. "Authorization came from the top. You overruled it." "I questioned it," she said. "There's a difference." The man's partner spoke for the first time. "And what gave you the authority to question?" Anna paused. "The same thing that gives me the authority to aim, judgment." The room went silent. Thorne's fingers tightened around his pen. The suited man leaned back, unimpressed. "We'll make note of your perspective." They stood, collected their files, and left. Thorne waited until the door closed before speaking. "I didn't have a choice," he said quietly. "They're not just looking at you, they're looking at me too." Anna nodded slowly. "That's how they do it, make everyone afraid to stand too close." Thorne hesitated. "Maybe if you lay low for a while." "Sir," she said gently, "you can't hide truth under sand. The wind always uncovers it." Then she left him sitting in the dim light of his own fear. Outside, the base buzzed with an artificial calm, the kind that comes before something breaks. Diaz found her near the range, cleaning her rifle. He crouched beside her, voice low. "Orders just came through. We're being reassigned." She didn't look up. "Reassigned. Temporary detachment. Forward recon at checkpoint Kilo 7. Anna's jaw tensed. "That's an unprotected line." "Yeah," Diaz said grimly. "Like they're hoping something will happen." Anna set her rifle down. "How soon?" 0300. She nodded. "Then we prepare." They left before dawn, just 4 of them. No escort, no support drone, no backup channel. Just a flat horizon and orders that didn't make sense. Checkpoint Kilo 7 wasn't even a checkpoint anymore. It had been decommissioned 2 years prior, little more than a cluster of sandbag walls and a rusted antenna tower. As they arrived, Roar muttered, "Why send us here?" Chun answered quietly, "Because no one would notice if we didn't come back." Anna scanned the horizon through her scope. Nothing but sand and distance. "Too quiet." "Set perimeter," she ordered. "Stay low, eyes open." They dug in as the sun climbed. Hours passed. Still nothing. By afternoon, the heat shimmered like liquid. The men grew restless. "Maybe it's just a test," Roar said. Anna didn't reply. Her instincts were screaming. Then faintly, she heard it, a distant thump in the wind. Mortar fire. She didn't hesitate. "Positions." A shell hit 50 meters short, sending a shockwave through the sand. Another followed, closer. They scrambled behind the crumbling wall. Diaz cursed, "We're exposed." Chun's voice cracked over the static. "No comms, signals jammed." "Of course it is," Anna muttered. She crawled to the edge, scanning the ridge with her scope. There, a glint of glass again, a familiar one. "Sniper." She steadied her rifle. The distance, roughly 1,400 meters, wind strong left to right. She exhaled. Crack. The enemy spotter dropped instantly. But there were more. 6 figures advancing from the south. Coordinated, professional, not local militia. "This isn't random," Diaz said through clenched teeth. "This is a hit." Anna reloaded, her voice steady. "Then we make them regret the contract." For the next 20 minutes, the desert became a storm of fire and sand. Anna called targets with surgical calm. Left ridge 2 advancing, wind 5 knots right. Crack ping. Roar adjust elevation pointate. Chun conserve ammo. Every shot felt like deja vu, the same rhythm, the same focus, only now it wasn't training. At one point, a round struck the sand inches from her face. The grit stung her cheek, blood mingling with sweat. She didn't flinch. Then the fire stopped. No movement, no sound. Diaz exhaled, adrenaline fatting. "That's all of them." Anna stayed silent. Her scope still swept the horizon. Something didn't fit. If they were mercenaries, they'd retreat when overpowered. But these hadn't come to test, they'd come to erase. She looked down at one of the fallen attackers as they approached the bodies. Their uniforms were unmarked, but the weapons American-made. Her pulse slowed. "They weren't insurgents," Diaz whispered. "No," Anna said softly, "they were ours." They returned to base under silence, dust and doubt clinging to them like armor. When they arrived, Thorne met them at the gate. The look on his face said he already knew. "I got the report," he said quietly. "Unmarked hostiles, U.S. calibers." Anna's eyes were cold. They wanted to finish what politics couldn't. Thorne nodded slowly. "You realize what happens if this gets out?" "I'm counting on it," she said. He gave a humorless smile. "You're not afraid?" "I've been shot at by professionals, sir. Fear doesn't change the wind." That night the platoon gathered around the workshop. No one ordered them there. They came because silence was no longer enough. Diaz spoke first. "If command wants to bury this, they will, but we can't let them rewrite it." Rohr looked at Anna. "What do we do?" She studied them for a long time, the young faces that had gone from arrogance to understanding. "We hold our ground," she said. "The truth doesn't need permission to exist, it just needs witnesses." Elias stepped forward, handing her a battered old data drive. "Everything," he said. "Radio logs, system pings, supply manifests, proof they tampered." She took it carefully. "You kept this." He smiled faintly. "You taught me to fix what's broken." Later, as the others dispersed, Anna sat alone at her workbench. The data drive lay beside her rifle, both reflecting the low light of a single lamp. She could expose it all, the falsified missions, the cover-ups, the internal sabotage. But she also knew what that meant. It wasn't just her career. It was theirs. Diaz, Chun, Rohr, Elias, even Thorne. To bring truth into daylight, someone had to step into shadow. She looked down at the rifle, the scarred, stubborn weapon that refused to die. And she made her decision. The next morning, the entire base awoke to silence. No morning drills. No radio chatter. Just a single encrypted file, uploaded to every terminal in the command network. A report titled, "Field Integrity Compromise, Confirmed Evidence Attached." No author, no signature. But everyone knew who had written it. Within hours, oversight investigators descended on FOB Arabus. They seized files, questioned staff, froze operations. By sunset, Anna Petrova was gone. No farewell. No transfer notice. No orders. Just absence. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some said she'd been reassigned to Black Ops. Others claimed she'd been detained, silenced, disappeared. Diaz didn't believe any of them. Every night he went to the ridge above the base, her ridge, where the desert wind still whispered through the rocks. He'd lie there, looking through his scope at the horizon. And sometimes, he'd swear he saw it, a faint glint of glass far in the distance. A single reflection. Watching. Guiding. Protecting. Because legends don't vanish. They fade into the places that need them most. And somewhere beyond the wire, in the same endless desert that once tried to bury her, the woman they'd called Baba Yaga watched the sunrise. Her rifle steady, her silence unbroken. A ghost made of patience and purpose. Sometimes strength isn't about defiance. It's about endurance. And the quiet promise that when the truth is hunted, someone will always be watching back. How long does it take for truth to turn into legend? Sometimes just one night of silence. By sunrise, FOB Arabus was no longer the same. The investigation team had come and gone, black SUVs, hard drives, sealed folders. The men in suits didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They just erased quietly, like deleting a memory that had become inconvenient. But not everything could be deleted. Some things stayed in whispers, in looks, in the spaces between orders. Anna Petrova was gone. No notice, no file, no trail. Just the faint impression of someone who had walked out of the machine before it could consume her. The soldiers spoke her name in fragments now. Never loudly. Never officially, but always with a strange reverence, like saying it kept something alive. Roar started carrying a small wrench in his vest pocket, not for repairs, but as a reminder. Chun kept a page from her old training manual folded in his wallet. Diaz, he just stopped talking as much. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder. Colonel Thorne returned to his duties, quieter, older somehow. He still gave orders, still wrote reports. But sometimes, late at night, his office light stayed on longer than before. And those who passed by swore they heard him whisper under his breath, "Don't bend, Petrova, don't you ever bend." 2 months passed. The world outside moved on new rotations, new missions, new wars. But inside FOB Arabus, the ghosts lingered. Then one morning, a new order arrived. Operation Sand Veil. A convoy of medical and supply units was ambushed 40 miles east of the base. Hostile forces had moved into the canyon system, terrain too dangerous for airstrikes. They needed ground recon and overwatch. Diaz read the mission file twice, then a third time. Something about it felt off. The coordinates, the pattern, the phrasing. It was almost identical to the mission that had nearly killed them months ago. He looked at Thorne across the briefing table. The colonel's eyes said what his mouth didn't. "They're testing us again." Diaz closed the file. "We're going." The desert welcomed them back like an old adversary. Same endless expanse. Same bitter wind. But this time, Anna wasn't with them. They moved as she taught them, silent, patient, deliberate. Every position chosen with care, every pause measured. They reached the ridge by sundown. Below, smoke rose from the canyon floor, remnants of burned-out vehicles. "Movement," Chun whispered, "southwest sector." Roar adjusted his scope. 2, no, 3 figures checking the wreckage. Diaz steadied his rifle, eyes narrowing. "They're not scavengers. Look at the formation, disciplined, cover arcs." He exhaled slowly. "This isn't a rescue op, it's a setup." For a moment, no one spoke. Then faintly through the comms came a voice, crisp, filtered through distortion. "Overwatch team, confirm visual, authorization pending." Diaz froze. The voice was official, too official. He looked at the signal ID. Command channel. Same encryption code Anna had warned them about. Roar muttered, "No way, not again." Diaz switched to a private channel. "Chun, cut the uplink, we go dark." Static filled his ear. "Done." Then silence. He looked at his men, his team, and realized something. They were waiting for him now, the way they used to wait for her. Responsibility had shifted without announcement. And it was heavier than any rifle. As night fell, they moved to lower ground, slipping through the rocks like shadows. No lights, no sound, just the slow rhythm of breath and gravel. The wreckage was still smoking when they reached it. 3 trucks, charred frames, melted tires. Chun scanned with infrared, no heat signatures. Diaz crouched beside one of the burned-out vehicles. He ran his hand along the metal, then stopped. There were holes in the side panel, perfectly round. "High-velocity penetrators," he murmured, "not mortar fire." Roar looked up, meaning someone used us again. That's when the first shot hit. It clipped the rock beside Chun's head, spraying dust into his eyes. "Sniper," Diaz shouted, dragging him down. Roar scanned the ridge, can't see the glint. Diaz's pulse quickened. The wind was high, the moon full, not ideal for counterfire. He steadied his breathing. Anna's voice echoed in his mind, "Don't fight the wind. Let it tell you where it came from." He closed his eyes for half a second, listening. Then he saw it, a brief shimmer across the far ridge. He adjusted 2 mills downwind, 1 left. Crack! The echo rolled through the canyon. Then silence. When it was over, they checked the body. Unmarked gear, no tags, same custom suppressor Anna had found months earlier. Roar swallowed hard. They keep sending ghosts. Diaz looked at the horizon. Then maybe it's time we send one back. They set up a temporary camp in the canyon. No lights, no signals. Just 4 soldiers and the dark. The fire burned low, shadows flickering across their faces. Chun finally broke the silence. You think she's alive? No one answered at first. Then Diaz spoke softly. Legends don't die, they just stop needing permission to live. Roar smiled faintly. That's something she'd say. Yeah, Diaz replied, it is. But even as they spoke, something strange happened. The comms unit, the one they disabled, flickered to life for a moment. Static, then a faint voice. A woman. Distorted, broken by interference. Wind north, 2 knots, check elevation. Then silence again. Chun's eyes went wide. Was that? Diaz nodded slowly. Yeah, that was her. Roar frowned. Could be old data, ghost signal. Maybe, Diaz said, but the wind direction was current. They looked at each other, no words needed. If she was alive, she was out there. Watching. Guiding. The next day, they tracked the enemy's retreat path north. The trail led through narrow ravines and crumbling cliffs, terrain built for ambush. They moved slowly, methodically. Every decision filtered through her voice in their heads. Don't chase movement, chase motive. If the path looks easy, it's because someone wants you to take it. Always trust the silence between gunfire. By dusk, they found the source, a communications relay disguised as a weather station. Diaz studied it through binoculars. Same pattern, same setup, different name. Roar tightened his grip on his rifle. Orders. Diaz took a deep breath. We end it. They split into pairs. Roar and Chun took the east approach. Diaz and a new corporal, Levi, circled west. The wind picked up, the kind that made voices vanish and bullets drift. Diaz crouched behind a boulder, raising his scope. 2 guards near the antenna, not local militia, clean uniforms, good posture. He waited for the wind to settle. Then faintly through his headset, a whisper. 2.5 right, hold steady. His breath caught. It was her voice again, clearer this time. He adjusted 2 clicks right. Crack. The first target dropped. He didn't hesitate, fired again. Second target down. He exhaled hard, his chest tightening with something between relief and disbelief. Target neutralized, he said softly. But when he turned to tell Levi, the corporal was gone. Levi, he whispered into his mic. No response. He moved quickly through the rocks, senses heightened. Then he saw it, a small drone hovering above the relay station. Markings US Tech, but no active ID. He raised his rifle to shoot it down. But a second voice cut through his earpiece, cold and official. Overwatch team, stand down. Operation Sandvale is concluded. Diaz froze. It wasn't Command's voice, it was Thorn. It was digital, synthetic. He lowered his weapon slowly. Who is this? Authorization terminated. Your presence is no longer required. Then static. The drone rose, turned, and vanished into the clouds. When the dust settled, they destroyed the relay. No data, no evidence. Only silence. But as the smoke rose, Chun looked at Diaz. You heard her too, didn't you? Diaz nodded. Yeah. She's out there, Chun said quietly. Diaz smiled faintly. She always was. When they returned to base, Thorn was waiting. He didn't ask for a report, didn't mention Command. He just looked at Diaz, eyes tired but proud. You did it by the book, he asked. Diaz shook his head. We did it by her book. Thorne's mouth twitched, not quite a smile but close. That's the better one. He handed Diaz a sealed envelope. No sender, Thorne said. Showed up through the internal courier, thought you should see it. Diaz opened it. Inside was a single photograph, a desert ridge under a blood-red sunset. In the distance, a faint figure stood beside a tripod rifle. The caption, handwritten in familiar ink, read, "Keep your eyes open, the wind never lies." That night Diaz walked out to the ridge, her ridge, and stood where she used to. The desert stretched endless before him. He raised his scope and looked toward the horizon. And there it was again, that small, perfect glint of light. A signal. A reminder. A promise. He lowered the rifle and whispered to the wind. Still watching, huh? The breeze answered softly, as if carrying laughter. He smiled. Yeah, thought so. In the months that followed, the legend of the woman sniper who vanished after exposing a false mission began to spread. Not in official reports, those never mentioned her name, but in quiet campfire stories, whispered across bases, shared between soldiers who'd seen too much and trusted too little. Some said she was dead. Some said she'd been recruited by a secret task force. Others swore she lived among the hills, protecting convoys that never knew her face. But one thing was always the same. Whenever a soldier survived a mission they weren't supposed to, someone would say, almost jokingly, "Guess she was watching." And maybe she was. Because somewhere, in the quiet between operations, when the desert went still and even the stars seemed to hold their breath, a lone figure would kneel by a scarred rifle, adjust the scope, and wait for the wind to shift. She didn't need orders anymore. Didn't need medals. Didn't need forgiveness. All she needed was the horizon, and the silence that came before the truth. How do you honor someone who disappears? You don't build statues. You don't hang medals. You remember the way they made you stand taller, even when no one was watching. 6 months had passed since Anna Petrova vanished into the desert. Her name no longer appeared in the active roster. Her personnel file was redacted, her history classified. To command, she had become a ghost. But to the soldiers who had served under her, she had become something else. A presence. A quiet guardian. The story spread beyond FOB Arabus. Tales of a phantom sniper who appeared before ambushes, guiding convoys through storms. Rumors of intercepted attacks, saved lives, unseen shots in the night. Most dismissed them as superstition. But those who'd heard the whisper of wind, before a bullet landed exactly where it needed to, they believed. Diaz had taken over the platoon now. He was Anna, he never tried to be, but the lessons she drilled into them lived in every movement he made. He taught patience before fire, compassion before command, and silence before noise. When new recruits asked about her, he didn't tell stories. He simply said, "She's the reason you're standing here." It was enough. The new threat came without warning. Early one morning, satellite data reported a large insurgent push near Sector 9, a supply route that fed half the region's outposts. Multiple convoys had gone missing. No distress signals, no wreckage. Just silence. Command called it statistical anomaly. Diaz called it what it was, a trap. Still, they ordered him to investigate. Standard recon, small team. Minimal risk, they said. He'd heard that before. By dusk, they were on the road. Diaz, Chun, Roar, and 3 new soldiers. The trucks moved slow, tires grinding against cracked stone. The canyon walls loomed on either side, dark and ancient, like they'd been waiting for centuries to close in. Roar scanned the ridgelines through binoculars. Too quiet, he muttered. Chun nodded. Not even birds. Diaz's gut tightened. Eyes open, safety off, no lights. The convoy crawled forward another 100 meters. Then the first explosion hit. Boom! The lead vehicle erupted in flame, throwing debris and dust into the air. Contact, get to cover, Diaz shouted. Automatic fire rained down from both ridges. Tracer rounds sliced through the dusk like red lightning. Ambush, Roar yelled, diving behind a boulder. Chun fired toward the flashes. They've got elevation. Diaz grabbed his radio. Command, this is Recon 2. We're under heavy fire, multiple positions, requesting air support. Static. No response. He switched frequencies. Nothing. Comms jammed, Chun shouted. Diaz clenched his jaw. Of course they were. They were cut off, outnumbered, out of range. And in that instant he knew. This wasn't an accident. Rounds tore through the air, chipping stone and shattering glass. Two of the new recruits panicked, firing blindly toward the cliffs. Hold your fire, Diaz barked. Conserve ammo. He scanned the ridge, too many shooters, too coordinated. Whoever set this up had studied them. Then in the chaos, a sharp whistle cut through the gunfire. 3 notes. Soft, familiar. Diaz froze. He knew that sound. He turned his head toward the western ridge. And there it was. A single reflection. Far above. A glint of glass just like before. His breath caught. No, it can't be. Roar followed his gaze. What? Diaz's voice was barely a whisper. She's here. Moments later, the wind shifted. A single shot cracked across the canyon, sharp, clean, deliberate. The enemy machine gun on the north ridge went silent. Then another. Then another. One by one, the heavy positions fell quiet. Each hit precise, measured. Roar's eyes went wide. That's her shooting. Diaz smiled tightly. You wanted proof, there it is. He took a breath, voice steady again. Let's move. They advanced between bursts of cover fire, and every time they shifted, another unseen shot cleared their path. It was as if an invisible hand was guiding them through the storm. By nightfall, the canyon was silent again. The last echoes of battle faded into the wind. Chun crouched beside a fallen enemy. Who the hell were these guys? Diaz knelt beside him. The uniforms were mismatched mercenary patches, unmarked rifles. But one detail stood out. Each had a small comm earpiece, identical to those used by Black Ops contractors. Not locals, Diaz said quietly. Command sent them. Roar stared at him. Sent them to kill us. Diaz didn't answer. He didn't have to. He looked back toward the ridge, the place the mysterious shots had come from. Nothing. Just darkness. The next morning, they climbed to the top. The ridge stretched endless, carved by centuries of wind. There were footprints, small, precise, heading toward the west. And in the dirt beside an empty cartridge, something lay half buried. A single bullet casing, engraved with 2 letters. AP. Diaz picked it up, turning it in his hand. The metal was warm from the sun, but the weight was colder than memory. She was here, he whispered. Roar smiled faintly. Guess the ghost still believes in us. Diaz nodded. No, she believes in something bigger. They returned to base battered but alive. When they reported the ambush, Command called it fog of war. Standard terminology for anything they couldn't explain or didn't want to. But word spread quickly. And before long, the legend grew stronger. Every soldier who heard the story added something. The number of hostiles, the precision of the cover fire, the impossible shot that turned the tide. No one could prove she was there. But everyone wanted to believe it. Because in a world where soldiers were told what to see, Believing in her meant believing in something they could feel. Weeks later, Diaz received a private transmission. No sender, no encryption tag. Just a single line of text. "Stop waiting for me, start leading." He stared at the words for a long time. Then he smiled. He gathered the platoon that night not for drills, but for something else. They stood outside the barracks under the open sky. No ranks, no commands, just soldiers side by side. Diaz spoke quietly. "She's gone, but she didn't disappear. She became the wind, the silence, the pause before a decision." He looked at each of them. "You want to honor her, then make your own choices worth her watching." No one applauded, no one saluted. They just nodded, because that's what soldiers do when words finally mean something. Months later, during a supply escort through another desert range, a new recruit asked Diaz, "Sir, do you ever wonder what happened to her?" Diaz adjusted his scope and smiled faintly. "Every day." "Do you think she's still out there?" He looked toward the horizon. The wind was calm, but the air shimmered, as if something invisible was watching. "She never left," he said. "She just stopped needing to be seen." That night, far beyond any map, Anna Petrova sat alone in the desert. Her campfire was small, her hands steady as she cleaned the same scarred rifle she'd rebuilt years ago. The stars glowed sharp and clear, unblinking witnesses to everything she'd done, and everything she'd chosen not to. From her vantage point, she could see faint light on the horizon, the base, still alive. Still standing. She smiled. For the first time in years, the weight in her chest felt lighter. The guilt, the anger, the isolation. She'd carried them like ammunition, heavy and necessary. But now she realized they'd done their job. They'd kept her going until her purpose could live in someone else. She opened a small leather notebook and wrote a few words. "Truth isn't a weapon, it's a compass. If you aim with it long enough, you'll find yourself again." She closed it, tucked it into her pack, and stood. The wind picked up, brushing her hair across her face. It carried the same familiar scent, sand, smoke, and distance. She raised her rifle one last time and looked through the scope, not at enemies, but at the horizon itself. A long, slow breath. Then a quiet laugh. "Still steady," she whispered, "still mine." She fired a single shot into the sky. Not at a target. Not at a threat. Just to remind the world she was still here. The sound echoed for miles, swallowed by the desert. And somewhere far away, Diaz heard it. He looked up from his post, smiled, and whispered into the wind, "Good shot, Anna." Morning came. The ridge was empty. Only a single set of footprints remained, leading into the endless sand, fatting where the dunes began to rise. No one ever found her again. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the air is still and the wind turns warm, the soldiers at FOB Arabus swear they hear it. The soft click of a rifle bolt, the faint hum of breath through a scope, and a whisper carried on the breeze. Aim true, the wind never lies. And maybe that's the real story. Not of the sniper who hit 99 targets in a row, but of the woman who fixed what was broken. Not just her rifle, but everyone who believed they couldn't be repaired. Because dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't demand to be seen. Sometimes, dignity simply acts.